It was the summer of 2020 when Galdra Studios released the Kickstarter trailer for their game Arcadia Fallen, a visual novel RPG where your choices affect your character's personality. I can't remember how or why I came across this, but a few things stood out to me when I watched the trailer. First off, the art style seemed unique compared to the style that I've been exposed to playing a lot of other visual novels. Second off, the theme tune that they had playing was quite the earworm. And three, for being a relatively small Kickstarted indie game, they pulled a dynamite cast for the voiceover. Names such as Allegra Clark, Laura Post, and Joe Zija were all attention grabbers. Suffice to say, I liked what I was seeing and I put some money down on the Kickstarter. And then on January 5th, the game was released for the Nintendo Switch. So let's take a look and see if Arcadia Fallen was able to live up to my initial curiosity. In Arcadia Fallen, you assume control of an apprentice alchemist. As such, a lot of the puzzle-based gameplay involves mixing potions together. This involves these rotation puzzles. Essentially, you are given a set of reagents and you have to match the symbols that the ingredients yield to the recipe in the book. The game provides a layer of optional challenge by giving you extra goals to do after the initial brewing, such as mix in 2 turns or less, or use only 2 ingredients. The puzzles for the demon encounters provide a bit of a change-up, being more about matching the full given pattern than mixing and matching the symbols. The character customization in Arcadia Fallen is solid. You can choose between 3 different body types, masculine, feminine, or androgynous. These body types have a choice between 2 hairstyles apiece, and there is the choice of being voiced by Erica Lindbeck or Sean Chiplock. As far as colors are concerned, you can customize the alchemist's hair color, skin tone, eye color, and the primary color of their clothes. If I had to offer one thing that I would have liked to be able to customize as well, it would have been the accenting colors on the alchemist's outfit. For example, I played with the feminine body type, and I would have liked to be able to change the color of the sleeves on the shirt. Obviously, it's not anything game-ruining, just a notion I had while I was making my character. Arcadia Fallen does everything it can to give the player the reins in shaping how they want their characters to act. I liked that the choices made in the game seemed to be less about branching paths and more about how you'd want your character to react to their situation. That's not to say that there aren't some pivotal conversations you can have with the party members to affect how their stories will end. I've only played the game once as of right now, but it seemed like there were at least 2 different outcomes, potentially more, for the endings of each of the major party members. I like this though because it keeps things at an interpersonal level, being more about what you want your effect on your friends to be rather than major implications for the main plot. So as with most visual novels, the story and characters are going to be the backbone of one's enjoyment of the game. The setup is simple enough. It's a quiet, relatively pedestrian day in the alchemist's home of Anemone Valley. Before too long, some chicanery happens and the alchemist finds themselves bound to Mime, the friendly spirit that they were defending. Soon after that, it's discovered that the town is dealing with a bit of a demon problem. Luckily, the bond between the alchemist and Mime allows them to banish the spirits. And from there, the game centers around gathering up your merry band of adventurers and finding a way to stop the demon outbreak permanently. The story does exactly what it needs to do. It fleshes out the world without ever resorting to a full-on exposition dump. The conflict sets up interesting situations to see our cast put in, and then is able to let the party interaction do the rest of the work in most situations. The story will often also present scenarios that put 2 or more of the members of the group at odds with one another, but they're so well written that it never comes off like one of them is just being ridiculous for the sake of some manufactured plot-ordained inter-party turmoil. As I previously mentioned, the characters in this game are great. I really enjoy all of the central cast. Mime, the friendly spirit that you are bound to, is quite endearing, and her sibling-like dynamic with the alchemist is a delight to watch play out. Victoria is a star knight who very much cares about her duties as a knight, and as such has little patience for people who cause chaos. Michael is a wild mage, somebody who learned magic outside of the jurisdiction of the Empire's Mage Academy, and thus is rather well-traveled, street-smart, and quite sarcastic. Anne is a mage whose motivations lie in finding a subject for her research that will earn her a position as a professor in the Mage Academy. At first she seems selfish, but it turns out that she cares more about people than she lets on. Caden is an outlander, a man from a society of mountain people who left his home in order to try and help with the demon problem in Anemone Valley. He has an air of mystery about him and also brings a sense of intrigue with the knowledge from his own culture rather than the one that the rest of the characters are entrenched in. The ancillary characters are all also pretty solid. I liked all of them except the ones that I wasn't supposed to like, in which case I carried a pretty hefty amount of disdain for them. The game does a great job at fleshing out the way all of these characters see the world, and letting you understand the paths that their lives have taken to lead them to that worldview. It makes it so that while you may not agree with everything that they think or do, you can understand why that's what they would do in their given situation with their previous experiences. I think a decent test for how good the characters are in a game like this is if they're still entertaining or interesting when they are interacting with the people that are not the player character. These characters pass that test. Some of my favorite interactions are the ones between Victoria and Michael. She tries rigidly to stick to order and the law, while Michael is much more willing to bend the rules if he believes what he's doing is right. And given the fact that he's technically an outlaw mage, the two of them would likely be adversaries if not for the alchemist acting as the linchpin between the two of them. I also really like the dynamic between Anne and Quinn, the flower shop owner. The two of them were classmates at the Mage Academy, and Quinn tries their best to believe in other people, while Anne is very closed off and only wants to complete her research and return to the Mage Academy. Quinn knows firsthand how good of a person Anne can be, so they would very much like for her to not close herself off and share more of herself with the world. Those were just two examples, but pretty much every possible combination of interaction holds some kind of interest to me. For example, Michael and Anne are both mages and they both have very different thoughts on the Empire and how they should deal with magic. Or Victoria and Caden are both struggling with their relationship with the concept of duty. Every dynamic is interesting in one way or another. I think the choice of art direction does a lot to set this game apart from others in the genre on a visual level. A number of visual novels that I've played are pretty similar looking at a glance. You could take one character sprite and impose it on the background of a different game, and I probably wouldn't think it looks all that out of place if I didn't already know any better. That's not the case with Arcadia Fallen. The thick white outlining on the character sprites really makes them pop against the storybook-esque backgrounds. The actual design of the characters are also pretty impeccable in their own right. I got a decent idea of what each character's deal was through the visual cues in their design. Anne looks very buttoned up and proper. Michael looks very loud and chaotic. Goldner looks like the kind of man I want to punch in the face. The excellent selection of characters are all brought to life by some truly solid performances. I played the game with Erica Lindbeck as the voice of my alchemist, and she does a great job at believably portraying the multitude of different tones you can make your character take in a given situation. I did not play the game with Sean Chiplock's voice, but I did play the demo with his voice once through, and he was also really solid for the slice of the game that the demo had covered. Sarah Nicole Robles brings an upbeat yet very anxious energy to Mime to make her all the more endearing. Allegra Clark is believable as the stern knight that Victoria is, and does a great job portraying the more vulnerable moments where Victoria is caught between being lawful and being moral. Alejandro Saab does a wonderful job at portraying Michael's wit and sarcasm while making it very clear that it is likely a Stepford Smiler smokescreen. Laura Post does a great job at portraying Anne's intellectual curiosity, as well as the sort of superiority she feels she has due to her intelligence and lack of interest for the world outside of the Mage Academy. Joe Zija does a great job at portraying the sense of mystery that Caden is introduced with, as well as his more fish-out-of-water tendencies. The ancillary cast all also turn in a very solid performance, the standout to me being Kyle McCleary's portrayal of Ronan. Arcadia Fallen gets a strong recommendation if you are a fan of visual novels. An enjoyable fantasy setting tees up a delightful cast for an entertaining adventure, and with how briskly the game moves along, it took me about 8 hours or so, and some of that was with idle time, I could easily see myself going back to play it a time or two in the near future.